Hello there and welcome to another Döhle Yacht Coffee Break. My name is Ben Geary, I'm the Fleet Statutory Manager. Today I'm joined by Mark Broster, who's the MD of Ecdis. And today I just wanted to talk a bit about Ecdis training. So my first question is, obviously there are so many systems on the market. There is obviously what I would call the minimum statutory requirements of training, which I think if you could describe would be great. And then kind of also, in your view, the recommended training you should probably do on top of that with these systems.
Okay, yeah. Well, look, the minimum statutory is what they call the generic course.
Yeah.
5-day course in a classroom somewhere in the world. Usually flag approved.
Mm-hmm.
The advantage of the generic course is it teaches you all the nuts and bolts you need to know with Ecdis. It's not specific. It won't tell you the knobology of the actual Ecdis you have,
yeah,
but it teaches you the fundamental principles behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Downside of that course is most people did the course when they didn't have Ecdis on board,
okay,
because they had to do it to get the qualification. It doesn't have to be repeated.
Right.
So, if you think about it, I did my first generic Ecdis course in 2002, where we didn't have ENC charts, and there was no requirement for me to retrain.
Okay, that's interesting.
This is a completely different beast now.
Yeah.
But so there are some disadvantages to the generic course, and often you'll find in our experience there'll be people on course that are thinking, "What's the point of this? I'm a paper ship. We're not getting Ecdis.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to pay too much attention." And then, funny old thing, a couple of months later they retrofit the ship with Ecdis, and they wish to take more attention now. But anyway, it's a good course. It is. It constantly needs updating because the technology evolves.
Yeah.
And that's hard to try to squeeze into the 40 hours of the sort of generic timetable, if you will.
Okay.
So it's hard to keep up to date with all the latest sort of standards, practices, and technology out there. And you are reliant, unfortunately, now on the college to do that for you and the effort to put in. And that's what we do as a living, all of us, is we're supposed to put effort into making sure that the syllabus is as best as it can be for what's actually out there at sea.
Yeah.
Because it evolves so much. But all being well, it's a cracking 5 days, and most people see it as a refresher, if I'm honest, in the principles of navigation anyway.
Okay.
Because they may not have talked about that for some time. After generic, you're then moving into what we call type specific, which is more the model of Ecdis you have.
Okay.
So Furuno FMD or JLC or Transas, whatever it is, the actual model you have. Now, you're not learning how Ecdis works on this course, whether that be in college or whether that be online. What you're learning is the knobology to do what you want to do. So it won't be teaching you how to set the chart up. It'll just be saying these are the buttons for turning layers on and off. So that's the sort of next level of training. Now, type-specific training varies depending on the manufacturer. So with a manufacturer that's got, say, a dozen menus at most, it can be quite quick.
Yeah.
If you've got some of the more complicated manufacturers that have got 40, 50, 60 sub-menu structures,
wow. Okay.
You could be looking at 8 hours just to work through it. And of course, the other thing about type-specific training, again, the downside is that as the manufacturers update the patches, software, etc., you need to find a way of keeping yourself refreshed.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is there obviously there's a statutory one, but if the type specific, is there a requirement to kind of annually get that updated? Because technology is moving so fast, and like you say, the software updates.
Well, it falls into ISM, so it's the concept of critical equipment on the bridge and you understanding how to use it.
Yeah.
The difficult subject is, if you've done type-specific training in your manufacturer 5 years ago and you've got that certificate, is it actually still the same kit?
Yeah.
Or has it completely evolved? And at what point would you say, look, we need to refresh ourselves because it's evolved so much? And there's no hard and fast answer for that.
Okay.
Some people argue it's at any software patch. That sounds a little aggressive because some of the manufacturers do 6 software patches a year. So that's not going to happen. And the software patches might be tiny changes. some would argue it's only a changing model, make or model, to a complete different manufacturer, which makes more logical sense. But in our experience, and we work with all the manufacturers, pretty much all the manufacturers, it's something you probably need to refresh yourself on every couple of years, because it is evolving, the charts are evolving. It's well worth the time, even if it's just a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Just to get back to the roots of how your Ecdis actually works and what's new on it. After familiarisation training, type-specific training, if you will, some people push it further, which is not just the make, as in Kelvin Q's or Sperry, but the model. So, if you're on version 6.9 of software or whatever, let's have a very specific checkoff card just for that exact model we're at now, and refresh ourselves with the latest updates. Now that's obviously, we're getting to sort of Rolls-Royce level of training now.
Yeah.
So we've done the generic, the principles, the type specific of understanding the rudimentary knobology of how the system works, and then going into the actual make and model number, specifically any software patches they've recently had, with a checklist of what the team need to review. And that's where it should be. So you would expect the second mate on board to say, everyone get together, we've just had an update to the software, these are the new options they've put in, so I've created a little checklist of things that we all need to refresh or familiarise ourselves with, taking it further than the type-specific training perhaps you did 5 years ago. So that would be the 3 levels of training, if you will.
Yeah, okay. And is that, so the level of training then is dictated by, obviously you've got your statutory, you've then got type specific, but then the further level is down to you as the bridge team, the preferences, whether you've got new people coming on board, it's the development of that training as making them better people, as it were, better understanding of the equipment.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, training is a small percent of keeping a ship safe.
Yeah.
A very, very small percent. Because it's all well and good understanding the principles of Ecdis, then understanding how to use the actual equipment, but it doesn't make the ship any safer. Just because you know the button to turn something on or off, you need support as to when you should be pressing that button to turn on or off. So what we're now looking at is the actual documentation of the ship's procedures, best practice advice on how to use it.
Yeah.
Because you can turn around and say, I know how to turn on wrecks or obstructions, but it would be much better if there was a robust set of procedures telling you when to have these things turned on and off. And now this is where captains come in, and this is where captains advise. There's no point in an individual saying, I have this thing looking out the front to keep you safe, and it's set to 6 minutes, if you can't stop your ship in 6 minutes. It's pointless evolution.
Yeah.
You've got an alarm telling you you're going to ground, but there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
So specific knowledge now comes from the captain or from the company saying, well, this needs to be set out to 12 minutes, 20 minutes, or whatever it is.
Yeah, okay.
So that's documentation, best practice of how to actually use it.
And is there a benefit? I mean, I know yachts and ships get audited to death, but is there a benefit to have almost like a navigational audit? For reassurance again that the officers, the people understand the equipment, they're using Ecdis as it should be, basically to all of its benefits that they've got on board. Absolutely. Is there a benefit to that? Because again, there's no requirement to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's no harm. There can possibly be no harm at all in having someone refresh you with and test you on what you should be doing on such an important piece of equipment as Ecdis.
Yeah.
Navigation's still fairly important at sea. So it's probably one of the most critical pieces of equipment you have on board if you think about it.
Yeah.
So is there any harm in having, let's call it a health check? And often what happens is a phrase comes in of standard slip, things change over time, an engineer comes in and pulls that out and plugs this in, and it sort of makes sense that every couple of years someone says, like, let's see where we're at this equipment now. Is it still conforming to the standard it was 10 years ago? Yeah. Or has some slips come in? Do the crew know how to use the safety critical menus properly, or are they just using the ones that they're used to and they have to watch handover? It makes perfect sense to have someone independent or internal, but someone with a fresh perspective saying, have we set it up correctly? Do we understand the core principles of it? it makes perfect sense.
All right, okay, fantastic. Well, Mark, thank you very much for your time. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this. If you've got any questions, as always, please fire them off to us. Our details will be at the end. Thank you.